They tell me the camera is running now, so I suppose I should begin. My name is Miriam. I am 67 years old, and for 63 of those years, I lived Amish. I wore the cape dress and the white prayer covering. I baked bread in a wood stove and hung wash on a line in the snow. I birthed 6 children in a farmhouse bedroom with no doctor, and I buried one of them, though for 40 years I was not permitted to speak of her. And 4 years ago, at an age when most women are settling into their rocking chairs, I walked away from everything I had ever known. This is the story of my first therapy session after leaving the Amish. The session where a young woman with a notepad stopped writing halfway through, set her pen down on the table, and just stared at me. I did not understand then why she stared. I understand now. And by the end of this video, you will understand too. But before I go any further, I want to ask something of you, because my granddaughter tells me this is how it is done. If you are new here, please press that subscribe button and the little bell beside it, so you do not miss the rest of my story, because there is far more of it than one video can hold. Press the like button as well, because it helps other people find these videos. People who perhaps need to hear that it is never too late to begin again. And there is one more thing I ask, and I ask it sincerely. Leave a comment below and tell me where in the world you are watching from. I spent 63 years never traveling more than 40 miles from the farm where I was born. The idea that my voice is reaching someone in Texas, or in the Philippines, or in Germany where my people came from 300 years ago, or in Australia on the other side of the earth, it still makes my hands tremble a little when I think of it. So tell me where you are. I read every comment, usually with my morning coffee, which I now drink with far too much sugar because nobody is watching me anymore. Now, let me tell you how an old Amish woman ended up on a therapist's couch. To understand why that session broke me open the way it did, you must first understand where I came from. I was born in the winter of 1958, in a district in the Midwest that I will not name, because there are still people there whom I love, and I do not wish to bring shame or attention to them. My father was a dairy farmer. My mother raised 9 children, of whom I was the 4th. Our house had no electricity, no telephone, no radio. Our light came from kerosene lamps, and our warmth from a wood stove. And our entertainment, such as it was, came from each other, from the German hymns we sang, and from work. Always, always from work. I want to be fair here, because I know that the English world, which is what we call all of you who are not Amish, has a great curiosity about my people, and much of what you have been told is either too rosy or too cruel. The truth sits in the middle, as truth usually does. There was real beauty in that life. When my father's barn burned in 1971, 200 men arrived within days and raised a new one before the month was out, and nobody was paid $1, and nobody expected to be. When a mother fell sick, casseroles and loaves of bread appeared on her porch like manna. Children ran barefoot through hayfields, and we ate food we had grown with our own hands. And on Sunday evenings, the young people sang hymns together until the lamps burned low. I will not stand here and tell you it was all darkness, because it was not, and I would be lying to you, and I have done enough lying in my life, mostly to myself. But there was another side, and it is the side that eventually brought me to that therapist's office. In my community, and I speak only of mine, for the Amish are not all the same, there was a rule beneath all the other rules, an unwritten one, and it was this: you do not feel too much. Or if you do feel, you do not show it, and you certainly do not speak of it. Joy was to be quiet. Grief was to be quieter. Anger was to be swallowed whole, like a bitter pill. And if it sat in your stomach for 50 years, well, that was between you and God. We had a word we used for everything. Gelassenheit. It means yielding. Submission. Letting go of your own will and accepting what comes, whether from God, from the church, or from the men who spoke for both. It is a beautiful idea in a sermon. It is a heavy thing to carry in a human heart, day after day, year after year, when the things you are yielding to are grinding you down to powder. Let me show you what I mean with a small story from my childhood, because it planted a seed that took 50 years to sprout. When I was 8 years old, my dog died. He was a farm dog, a brown mongrel named Wasser, because as a puppy he was forever falling into the water trough. He followed me everywhere. He slept in the barn, but he waited for me every morning by the kitchen door. And when I did my chores, he trotted behind me like a small brown shadow. One October morning, he was kicked by a horse, and he died in the straw while I held his head in my lap. I cried. Of course I cried. I was 8 years old, and my best friend in the world had just died in my arms. My father found me there, crying in the barn, and he was not a cruel man, I want you to know that. He was a tired man doing what had been done to him. He lifted me up by the arm, not roughly, and he said, in our Pennsylvania Dutch, "That is enough now. He is only an animal. Go wash your face before your mother sees you." And that was all. There was no funeral for Wasser, no moment of silence, no arm around my shoulder. There was a shovel, and there was a hole behind the corn crib, and there was supper at the usual time, and I was expected to eat it with a clean face and a quiet mouth. And here is the part that matters. I did. I washed my face, and I ate my supper, and I said nothing. And everyone at that table thought this was right and proper, including in time, me. I learned the lesson that every child in my community learned, most of them far younger than 8. Your feelings are a private weather. You may notice the storm, but you do not speak of it. You do not act on it. And above all, you do not let it show on your face. I carried that lesson into my marriage. I was 19 when I married Levi. It was not an arranged marriage. The Amish do not do that, whatever you may have heard. But it was an expected one. He was from a good family 2 districts over. He was baptized. He was steady. And my parents approved. And in my world, that was very nearly the whole of the matter. Did I love him? People ask me this now, English people, and they ask it as if love is a simple thing you either have in your pocket or you do not. I will say this. I grew to love him, in the way you grow to love a coat you have worn for 40 years. He was not unkind. He never raised his hand to me, and I know women in my community who could not say the same and had nowhere to take that sorrow. He worked hard, he prayed hard, and he provided. But Levi was raised by the same silence that raised me, only deeper, because he was a man, and men in our world were permitted even fewer feelings than women. In 41 years of marriage, I saw my husband weep exactly once, and I will come to that once, because it is at the very center of this story. We took over a farm near my parents. I bore 6 children in 11 years. Rebecca first, then Samuel, then Daniel, then a daughter I will speak of soon, then Rachel, then little Amos. My days began at 4:30 in the morning and ended when the last dish was dried and the last child was prayed over. And I want to be honest with you, there was happiness in those years. Real happiness. Bread rising on the counter. Babies laughing in the wash basket. Levi's low voice reading scripture by lamplight while snow came down outside. If you had stopped me on the road in 1985 and asked if I was content, I would have said yes, and I would have half believed it. That is the thing about a life with no mirrors in it, and I mean that both ways. For we had no mirrors on our walls beyond a small one for the men to shave by, and we had no mirrors for the soul either. No books about feelings, no television programs, no friends who asked, "How are you really?" When no one ever asks you how you really are, you stop asking yourself. You can lose track of your own heart for decades that way. I know, because I did. And now I must tell you about my fourth child, because she is the reason the therapist stopped taking notes. Her name was Sarah. In the spring of 1986, I was carrying her, my fourth, and everything was as it had been the other 3 times, until the 8th month, when it was not. I will not give you every detail, because some things I still hold close. But I will tell you what you need to know. One morning I could not feel her moving. I told Levi. He hitched the buggy and we drove to the midwife, and the midwife listened with her wooden horn for a long time, much too long. And then she looked at me with a face I have never forgotten, and she said, quietly, in Dutch, "The heart is not there anymore, Miriam." I delivered my daughter Sarah 2 weeks later, in the same bedroom where I had delivered her brothers and sister, and she was born silent, and she was perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a haul of dark hair like her father's. She was buried the next day in the graveyard behind the schoolhouse, in a small pine box that Levi built himself in the barn that night. And that was the one time I saw my husband weep, alone, at his workbench, when he thought no one could see him, his shoulders shaking over that little box, making no sound at all. Even his grief was silent. Even that. And here is what happened after Sarah was buried. Nothing. That is the truthful answer, and it is the most terrible answer I can give. Nothing happened. There was a funeral, brief and plain as our funerals are. The women brought food. The bishop spoke of God's will, of how the Lord gives and the Lord takes away, of how we must not question but yield. Gelassenheit. Always Gelassenheit. And then, within a week, the food stopped coming, and the visits stopped coming, and life resumed. The cows still needed milking. The other children still needed feeding, and I was expected, without anyone ever saying it aloud, to close the door on that bedroom in my heart and never open it again. Nobody said Sarah's name. I want you to sit with that a moment, especially if you are a mother watching this. And I know from the comments on my other videos that many of you are. Nobody, ever, said her name. Not my mother. Not my sisters. Not the women at church who had themselves buried babies, and there were more of them than you would think. Not Leafy. Especially not Leafy. Once, perhaps a month after, I tried. We were lying in bed in the dark and I said, "Leafy, I keep thinking about her." And there was a long silence, so long I thought he was asleep, and then he said, "It does no good to dwell, Miriam. She is with God. Go to sleep." And he was not being cruel. I must say this again and again, because the English world loves a villain, and there is no villain in this story, only a whole community of wounded people passing their wounds down like heirloom quilts. Levi believed with his whole heart that he was helping me. In our world, dwelling on grief was very nearly a sin. It suggested you did not trust God's plan. It suggested pride, as if your sorrow were more important than his will. The kindest thing a husband could do for a grieving wife, as Levi had been taught, was to help her stop. So I stopped. On the outside. I want to tell you what it is like to carry a grief that has no permission to exist, because I suspect some of you watching know exactly what I mean. and I want you to hear an old woman say out loud what you have perhaps never heard said. A buried grief does not die. It goes underground, and it gets to work. Mine went into my body. Within a year of Sarah's death, I had headaches that lasted for days, a band of iron around my skull. My hands ached. My stomach turned against food it had welcomed all my life. I would be kneading dough and suddenly find that I could not breathe properly, that my heart was galloping like a spooked horse, and I would grip the edge of the counter and wait for it to pass and tell no one. I know now that these were panic attacks. I did not know that word for another 35 years. At the time, I thought I was being punished, or tested, or that something was quietly breaking in me the way a wagon axle breaks, fine one day and split the next. Twice I fainted in church. The women said it was the heat. In February, and there was a stranger thing, and I have never spoken of this publicly until now, so you are hearing it here first. For years, every October, the month Sarah should never have been born, and was, I would find myself standing in odd places with no memory of walking to them. The doorway of the boys' room, the far corner of the garden, the graveyard fence, half a mile from our farm, in my apron with bread flour still on my hands. My body was making pilgrimages my mind refused to acknowledge. The therapist has a word for that too, but I am getting ahead of myself, and my granddaughter says I must not give away the ending, or you will not stay to the end, and I am told staying to the end matters a great deal on this YouTube. The years went by, as years do, whether you are living them or only enduring them. My children grew. Rebecca married a good man from Indiana. Samuel took over the neighbor's farm. Daniel became a carpenter like the grandfather he never met. Little Amos grew to 6'2", which we joked must have come from the milk. And then there was Rachel, my 5th child, born 2 years after Sarah. And I must confess something to you now that shames me, though the therapist tells me shame is not the right tenant for this particular room. When Rachel was born alive and squalling, I could not hold her at first. The midwife laid her on my chest, and I began to shake so hard they thought I was having a fit, and my mother took the baby and I turned my face to the wall. Everyone said it was exhaustion. It was not exhaustion. It was terror. I had learned that loving a baby was a door through which annihilation could walk, and my whole body was trying to refuse the door. I did hold her, of course, within the hour, and I loved her. God knows I loved her, perhaps most fiercely of all of them. But there was a flinch in my love from the very first day, a bracing, and children feel these things, I am convinced of it. They feel them in their bones long before they have words. Rachel grew up sensing that her mother held something back, and she never knew what, and I never knew I was doing it, and that misunderstanding grew between us like a hedge that nobody planted, but both of us watered. Rachel was different from my other children, and different is a heavy word to carry in an Amish community. She asked questions in a world built on not asking. Why must the women sit on one side of the room? Why can Amos go work construction with the English crew, but I cannot take a job in town? Why does the bishop decide how wide my dress hem may be? When she was 16 and in her Rumspringa, that period the English are so fascinated by, when our young people have a little rope before choosing baptism, Rachel got a library card. That was all. A library card in town. And she read the way a starving person eats, without manners, without stopping. I would find books hidden in the feed room, under her mattress, once inside an emptied flour sack, and I did what I am ashamed of now. I took them away. I told her what had been told to me, that too much reading of worldly books plants doubt, and doubt is the devil's seed. I stood in my own kitchen, and I closed the very door my daughter was trying to walk through toward air and light, because I was afraid, and because fear had been my mother tongue since before I could speak. Rachel was baptized at 19. I have often wondered why she chose it, and years later she told me. She said, "Mama, I did it because I could not imagine a world where I could not see you." Remember that sentence. It will come back like a splinter working its way to the surface. She married. She had 2 children, my grandchildren. One of them the granddaughter Emma, who now sets up this camera and teaches me what a comment section is. And for 9 years, Rachel tried to make her spirit small enough to fit the life she had promised. And I watched her do it, and I said nothing. Because I had spent my whole life saying nothing, and I no longer even noticed the taste of it. And then, in the spring she turned 29, Rachel left. She left her husband, who was not a bad man but was a wall of a man, and she took nothing but a bag of clothes. And because she had been baptized, the full weight of the ordnung came down upon her. She was excommunicated. She was placed in the ban. And her children stayed with their father. Because that is how it went. And if you want to know what sound a heart makes when it tears completely in half, I heard my daughter make it in the lane in front of our farmhouse, the day the bishop's decision was read, when she came to see her babies and was turned away. Now I must explain shunning to you, because English movies get it wrong. We did not pretend Rachel was invisible. Shunning is quieter and, I have come to believe, crueler than that. I could speak to her, but not eat at a table with her. I could hand her nothing directly. No plate, no letter, no dollar. It must be set down for her to pick up. I was expected to treat my own child, in 100 small ceremonial ways, as a vessel of contagion, and the purpose of it, we were taught, was love. It was meant to be a severe mercy, a pain that would drive the wanderer home to God. For 11 years I shunned my daughter. I want to say that plainly, into this camera, with my own mouth, because I will not soften what I did. When she came to the farm, I let her stand in the yard. When she wrote letters, I read them by lamplight, weeping in a way I had forgotten I could. And then I answered them with 3 cold lines about the weather and the health of the horses, because the deacon had counseled that warm letters would only comfort her in her sin. 11 Christmases, 11 birthdays. My grandchildren growing up 40 minutes away, being told, gently, in Dutch, that their mother had chosen the devil's world. And I permitted it. I did more than permit it. I participated in it, with my spine straight and my covering pinned and my heart in a pine box of its own, right next to Sarah's. You may be asking, how does a mother do such a thing? And I will tell you the truth the therapist helped me find, though it took many sessions after that first one. You do it the same way you wash your face at 8 years old and eat your supper over a dead dog. You do it because everyone around you agrees it is right. And human beings, my dear ones, are herd creatures more than we would like to admit. You do it because the cost of refusing is the loss of everything. Your church, your family, your salvation as you understand it, your entire map of the world. And you do it because somewhere along the line, obedience got tangled up with love in your heart, until you could no longer tell which was which, and the tangling started so young you cannot remember a time before it. I am not excusing myself. I am explaining a machine from the inside, because I lived inside the machine for 63 years, and if my explanation helps even one of you understand a parent or a grandparent who has hurt you in the name of God, then this old woman's shame will have bought something worth having. Then came the autumn that Levi got sick. It began as a cough that would not leave, and by Christmas the English doctor, whom we did see for serious matters, whatever you may have heard, was using the word that has no soft edges in any language. It was in his lungs, and then it was in his bones. And it moved fast, the way it sometimes mercifully does in men who never once complained in their lives. I nursed him at home for 5 months. And in the last weeks, something happened that I still cannot speak of without my voice going strange, so forgive me if it does. Levi began to talk. My silent husband, my wall of a man, lying in the bed where all our children had been born, began at the very end of his life to say the things that 40 years could not pry out of him. And one night, near the end, he took my wrist with what strength he had left, and he said, "Miriam, I think of the little one. I have thought of her every October of my life. And I never let you speak of her. And I was wrong. And when I see her, I will tell her that her father was wrong." He said Sarah's name. The first time in 36 years that anyone had said her name in my hearing. And then he said one thing more. He said, "When I am gone, go get Rachel. Do not let them stop you. A man should not learn mercy this late, but better late than in the grave." He died on a Tuesday morning in May, with the window open and the smell of lilacs coming in, and I sat with him for an hour before I called anyone. And in that hour, something in me that had been asleep for 60 years opened one eye. I did not leave right away. I want to be honest about that, because these stories are always told as if a door slams and a woman strides off into the sunrise, and it was not like that at all. It was slow, and it was frightening, and it happened in inches. After Levi's funeral, I wrote Rachel a real letter for the first time in 11 years. 4 pages. I told her about her father's last words. I asked, without asking, whether a door might still be open. Her answer came back in 9 days, and I have it still, in the drawer beside my bed, and it began with the words, "Mama, I have been waiting 11 years to be allowed to love you again." She came to visit. I let her in the house. I made her coffee, and I set the cup down in front of her, directly in front of her, hand to hand, which sounds like nothing to you, and was, in my world, a small act of rebellion with a long shadow. Word travels in a plain community faster than any telephone could carry it. Within a month, the deacon visited. Within 2, the bishop. They were not monsters, I say again. They were men doing what the machine required. They sat in my kitchen, in the chairs my dead husband had made, and they explained, kindly, patiently, that if I continued to eat and drink with a woman in the ban, even my own daughter, I would be placing my own soul in jeopardy, and the church would have no choice but to discipline me as well. And I sat there, a 62-year-old widow with flour on her apron, and I heard myself say a sentence I had never said to any man in authority in my life. I said, "Then the church must do what it must do, and so must I." It took another year of visits and warnings, and one final meeting where I was asked, before the membership, to confess my fault and promise to keep the ban. I stood up in that room where I had worshipped for 6 decades, among faces I had known since childhood, women whose babies I had helped deliver, men who had raised my husband's coffin onto their shoulders, and I said no. Just that. I am told my voice did not shake. I do not remember. I remember the silence afterward, which was the loudest thing I have ever heard. And I remember walking out into the March cold, and Rachel's little English car idling at the end of the lane, exhaust curling up like breath, and my whole life in 2 suitcases on the seat behind her. I was 63 years old. I had $11 of my own money, a third-grade education by English reckoning, though we schooled to 8th, no birth certificate that anyone could find, no driver's license, no bank account, and no idea, truly no idea, how to live in your world. And I got in the car. Now, this video is about the therapy session, and I promise you we are nearly at that door. But you must let me tell you a little about that first year in the English world. Because the state I was in when I finally sat down on that couch was built in that year. Imagine, if you can, being dropped into a foreign country at 63, except the foreign country is your own, and everyone assumes you know how it works. I did not know how to use a light switch without a small flinch of guilt. That is the truth. 60 years of training does not wash out in a season. The first time Rachel's dishwasher started, I stood up from the table in alarm. Grocery stores made me weep, and not for joy. 40 kinds of bread, and I stood in that aisle thinking of women I knew who ground their own flour. And I felt like a traitor and a child and a ghost all at once. I could not sleep for the electric hum of the house. I missed my hens. I missed the smell of the barn, and Dutch spoken around a table, and knowing exactly who I was when I woke in the morning, even if who I was had been slowly killing me. And the loneliness. Ugh, the loneliness. You must understand, I did not only lose a church, I lost my sons. Rebecca writes to me, may God bless her, careful letters that would not trouble a bishop. But my boys keep the band strictly, and when I telephoned Samuel's shop that first summer, his voice went flat and formal, and he asked me to please not call again, Mama, and hung up. And I sat on Rachel's porch step with the telephone in my lap until the streetlights came on. Streetlights, even my grief happened under different light now. But there were mercies, and the greatest of them was Emma, Rachel's daughter, my granddaughter, who had left the community herself at 19 and was now 26 and studying nursing. Emma took me on as a sort of project, I think, in the beginning, and then somewhere it turned into the real thing, into a friendship of the kind I did not know could exist between an old woman and a young one. She taught me the bus routes. She taught me the self-checkout, which we do not need to discuss further. She sat with me for the citizenship of the modern world, all of it, and never once made me feel foolish, though I gave her 100 opportunities a day. And Emma was the one who noticed what I could not see. She noticed that I did not sleep. She noticed that I stood at the kitchen window at 3 in the morning. She noticed that every October, that same old October, I went somewhere behind my own eyes and could not be reached. And that when a baby cried in a store, I sometimes had to walk outside. And one evening in my second English winter, she sat down across from me at the table, took both my hands the way no one does, and said, "Gross Mammy, I love you, and I think you are carrying more than a person can carry alone, and I want you to talk to a therapist. I want you to understand what that word meant to me, therapist, because unless you were raised as I was, you cannot know the size of the wall Emma was asking me to climb. In my community, we did not have therapy. We barely had the concept of it. Troubles of the mind were spoken of in whispers, when they were spoken of at all, and there were only a few explanations on offer. Perhaps it was nerves, which was the kindest one. Perhaps it was a failure to yield, a stubborn will that needed breaking. Perhaps you were not praying rightly. And underneath all of it, unspoken but always present, was the oldest explanation of all. That a mind in torment might be a soul under attack, and the remedy for that was not talking but repenting. I knew a woman, I will call her Fanny, who after her 5th baby fell into a darkness so deep she could not rise from bed. And the community's answer was to send other women to do her wash and to counsel her to greater faithfulness. And I remember, God forgive me, standing in her kitchen with a casserole, being one of those women, thinking privately that Fanny ought to try harder. That is what I had inside me. So when Emma said therapist, everything in me stood up at once and said no. I said, that is for English people. I said, I am old. What is the sense of it now? You do not reupholster a buggy that is going to the scrapyard. Emma did not like that sentence at all. I said, and this was the true one, the one under the others. I said, Emma, if I open that door, I do not know what will come out, and I have been holding it shut for 60 years. And holding it shut is the only thing I know how to do. And Emma, who will be a wonderful nurse, said the thing that finally moved me. She said, Gross Memmy, you are not holding the door shut. The door is holding you. And then she said, you got in Mama's car with 2 suitcases at 63. This is just another car. And she pulled out her telephone and found a counselor 1 town over. A woman. Because I would not have gone to a man. I could not have. And the practice said on its little page that they had experience with religious trauma and with people leaving high control groups. I bristled at that, I will tell you. High control group. I thought, we are not one of those. We are just plain people. I had a great deal to learn about the words for my own life. The appointment was set for a Thursday at 10 in the morning, in February, and I did not sleep the night before, which was not unusual, but this was a different not sleeping. I lay in my bed in Rachel's house, in the little room with the quilt I had brought from the farm, the one my mother made, and I rehearsed. That is the truth. I rehearsed being fine. I planned to go, because I had promised Emma, and to be pleasant and orderly, and to tell the woman a tidy version of my story, the version with the corners tucked in, and to come home having proven that an old Amish woman's business is between herself and God. I had spent a lifetime giving people the tucked-in version. I was very good at it. I could tuck in a hurricane. Emma drove me. It was one of those flat gray February mornings where the snow is old and tired, and I remember the drive better than almost anything, the way you remember the road to a hospital. I wore my plainest dress. I had stopped wearing the covering by then, that is its own video, and my head still felt naked every single day, and that morning I wore a dark headscarf, halfway between 2 worlds, which was exactly where the rest of me lived too. In the car, Emma talked about nothing on purpose, about her classes, about a dog she had seen wearing boots, and I held my handbag on my lap with both hands like it might try to escape, and somewhere in that drive I found I was doing the thing with my breath, the counting thing from the panic years, in through the nose while the fence posts go by, and I had not needed it since the farm. The office was in an ordinary brick building beside a dentist. I do not know what I had imagined. Something colder, I think. More like a courtroom. Or more like a doctor's office with the paper on the table. Instead, there was a waiting room with soft chairs and a lamp like a home has, and a small fountain making water noises in the corner, and a table of magazines I was too frightened to read. A young man came out of a door, red around the eyes, and left without looking at anyone. And I thought, that is what happens in there. They open you and send you out into the cold with your seams undone, and I very nearly stood up. Emma says I did stand up, halfway, and sat back down when she looked at me. She stayed in the waiting room the whole hour. She had brought a book and everything. That child. At 10 o'clock exactly, a door opened, and a woman came out and said my name, my first name, gently, with a question mark on the end of it. Miriam? And I want to describe her to you, because you have been waiting for her, the woman who stopped taking notes. She was younger than my Rachel, perhaps 35. Dark hair pulled back plain, which comforted me more than I can say. A cardigan the color of oatmeal, spectacles and shoes that made no sound. Her name was Dr. Hoffman, and yes, I noticed the German name at once, and yes, that mattered to me, foolishly perhaps. But you take your comforts where they grow. Her office had 2 armchairs facing each other, a small table between them with a box of tissues, which I eyed the way you eye a trap. A bookshelf, a plant that needed water, I remember thinking, and a window looking out on the parking lot, where a crow was doing something to a discarded sandwich. No couch, by the way. I had been told there would be a couch. There is no couch. I sat in the chair nearest the door. She noticed that, she told me months later. They notice everything, these people. It is their farming. She began gently, with the papers and the formalities, and then she said something I did not expect. She said, "Before we start, I want you to know that nothing leaves this room. What you say here is confidential, protected. You could tell me anything at all, and it stays between us." And I sat with my handbag on my knees and thought, you sweet English child, you have no idea what you have just said to me. I had lived 63 years in a world with no confidential anywhere in it. In my community, everything was known. The bishop knew, the deacons knew, the sisters knew, the district knew. Confession was public, before the membership. Discipline was public. If a wife wept too long at a graveside, it was discussed in kitchens for 3 townships. The idea of a room where words could be spoken and simply stay, like water poured into deep ground instead of running downhill into everyone's field, I did not believe it. I want to be plain about that. I did not believe her for 1 minute. But I noted it, the way you note where the exits are. She had a yellow notepad on her knee and a pen, and she asked her first questions. Easy ones. And I gave her the tucked-in version, exactly as rehearsed. I was raised Amish. I left 3 years ago. My husband passed. My daughter had left before me, and I came to be near her. My granddaughter thought it would be good for me to have someone to talk to. I sleep poorly, but I am old, and old women sleep poorly. This is known. I said all of it in the pleasant, orderly voice I had used my whole life for bishops and midwives and English cashiers, and she wrote on her pad, and nodded and asked the next thing, and I began to relax, because this was going exactly as I had planned. We would fill the hour with the tucked-in version. I would thank her. Emma would be satisfied. And I would never come back. And then, Dr. Hoffman did something that I now know as the whole trade, the whole craft of these people. She did not ask me about my troubles. She asked me about my days. She said, "Tell me what a day looked like. Back on the farm, an ordinary day, start to finish." And heck, my friends, I was so glad of that question. Safe ground. I talked and talked. Up at 4:30, the stove, the milking, the bread, the garden, the wash on Mondays, the canning in August, the church Sundays, 3 hours on backless benches and don't you complain. She laughed at that. A real laugh, and I found I liked making her laugh, and I talked more. 60 years of days. And somewhere in all that talking, without noticing, I walked myself right up to the edge of October. She asked, so gently, like someone stepping over a sleeping cat, "Were all the seasons the same for you? Or were some harder than others?" And I heard my own voice say, "October was hard." And she said, "What happened in October?" And I said, before the rehearsed woman in me could stop it, that is when I lost Sarah. Now you must understand what I had done. In 36 years, I had never once said that sentence aloud. Levi had said her name to me on his deathbed, but I had never said it to a living soul. Not to Rachel, not to Emma, not to myself in an empty kitchen. And a stranger in an oatmeal cardigan had gotten it out of me in under 20 minutes with a question about seasons. I heard the sentence hang in the air, and I felt the old cold go through me, the court feeling. The same feeling as being 8 years old and lifted up by the arm in the barn, and I braced for it, for the English version of go wash your face, for her to write something on the pad and move along, or worse, to press in with greedy questions the way people press at an accident. She did neither. She let the quiet sit, and then she said 5 words. She said, "Miriam, who is Sarah?" Not what happened. Who is Sarah? Present tense, do you hear it? Who is Sarah? As if my daughter were a person and not an event. And something in my chest, some timber that had been bearing weight since 1986, made a sound. I told her. I told her about the 8th month and the stillness, about the midwife with the wooden horn, about the bedroom and the silence where the crying should have been. I told her about the 10 fingers and the 10 toes and the dark hall of hair, and I told it in a strange flat voice, my telling voice, the voice I would have used for a weather report, because that was the only voice I had ever been permitted, and I remember apologizing to her for it. I said, "Forgive me. I know I sound cold. I am not cold. I do not know how to sound like what I am." And she said, "You sound like someone who was never given anywhere to put this." And she was still writing then. I could see the pen moving at the edge of my sight, and I kept going. I could not have stopped. 60 years of pressure will do that when it finds a crack. I told her about the pine box Levi built in the night, and his shoulders shaking without sound. I told her about the funeral where God's will was explained to me before my milk had even dried. And then I came to the part I had not planned to tell. The part I had never told. The part I had nearly succeeded in not knowing myself. I told her about the 3rd day after the burial. The women had gone home. The casseroles had stopped. And I was standing in my kitchen at midday. And from the upstairs came the sound of the baby crying. Clear as church bells, Sarah crying, hungry. And my body answered before my mind could. My milk came down and I was up those stairs before I knew I had moved. Into the bedroom. To the cradle. And the cradle was empty. Of course it was empty. It had always been going to be empty. And I stood there with my arms already curved for the weight of her. And do you know what I did then? I want you to hear this, because this is the moment the pen stopped. I straightened the cradle blanket. I smoothed it flat with both hands, tucked the corners, the way you make any bed. I went back down the stairs. I finished making dinner, and when Levi and the children came in from the fields, dinner was on the table at 12 noon exactly. And no one ever knew. And I never went back up those stairs at midday again, not once. For 36 years, I arranged my whole day, every day, for 36 years, so that I would never again be downstairs alone at noon where I might hear her. And until I said it out loud in that office, I did not know I had done it. And that is when it happened. I heard the silence where the pen scratching had been, and I looked up, because I had been talking to my own hands, and Dr. Hoffman had stopped taking notes. The pen was lying on the pad, and the pad was sliding sideways on her knee like a thing forgotten, and she was staring at me. Not the stare of horror, not the stare of pity. I know that one in all its costumes. She was staring at me the way you stare at a barn that is somehow still standing after the tornado has gone through, when you walk around it and cannot find the reason it stands. Her eyes were bright, too bright, and I realized, with a shock I cannot describe, that this young English stranger was holding back tears over my Sarah, over a baby dead 36 years, whose own grandmother had never wept for her in company. And something about that, the sight of a stranger's grief standing in for all the grief that was never offered, broke the last timber. And I, Miriam, 66 years old, who had not truly cried since a barn in October of 1966, put my face into my hands in a stranger's office and wept like the world was ending. Because a world was. The world where I carried it alone. That world ended on a Thursday morning in February next door to a dentist, and I have not lived in it since. I do not know how long I cried. Emma says I was in there 20 minutes past the hour, and Dr. Hoffman never once hurried me, though I learned later she had moved her next appointment, quietly, from the little telephone on her desk, while I was bent over my own knees. When the weeping finally slowed, the way a hard rain slows, in gusts, I was ashamed. Of course I was ashamed. Shame was my oldest coat, and I reached for it by pure habit. I began to apologize. I said, "Forgive me. I do not do this. I have wasted your hour. I am not usually." And she stopped me. She leaned forward and she said, "Miriam, may I tell you what I see?" And I nodded, because I could not speak, and I will give you her words as close to exactly as an old woman's memory can carry them, because I have turned them over so many times they are worn smooth like creek stones. She said, "I have been doing this work for 11 years. I have sat with a great deal of grief. But I want you to understand what you just described to me, because I do not think you understand it yourself. You delivered a full-term daughter who had died in your own bedroom with no medical support and no pain relief. You were given one day to bury her and no days at all to mourn her. Your community, your husband, your own mother, every person whose job it was to hold you, instead handed you silence and called it faith. You heard your dead child crying, which is a documented experience of bereaved mothers. It is grief, not madness, and you had no one on this earth safe enough to tell. So you smoothed a blanket and cooked dinner and restructured 36 years of your daily life around avoiding a staircase at noon. And then you lost your living daughter to a shunning you were forced to take part in, and then you nursed your husband to his death, and then, at 63, you gave up every person and place and certainty you had ever known, and started over in a foreign world, alone. And she paused, and her voice was not steady either, and she said, "Miriam, I stopped writing because I realized I was in the room with the strongest person I have ever met, and I did not want to miss it. The strongest person. I want to sit with that a moment, because I argued with her, even weeping, even wrung out, I argued. I said, no, strong women do not fall apart in offices. Strong is what I was before, when I carried it and no one knew." And she said the sentence that I have since had Emma write out in her nice round hand, and it is taped inside my cupboard door where the coffee lives, so I see it every morning. She said, "That was not strength, Miriam. That was survival. Strength is what you are doing right now. Survival is holding the door shut. Strength is opening it." My friends, I am 70 years short of understanding everything that sentence means. But I know it is true the way I know bread is done, from the inside, without a thermometer. And then she gave me words. This may sound like a small thing to you who have grown up swimming in words for feelings, but for me it was like being handed a lantern in a cellar I had lived in all my life. She said the word grief, and explained that grief which is never allowed to move through a person does not evaporate, it takes up residence in the body, in the sleep, in the hands, in October's. She said the word trauma, and I flinched. I told her that word was surely too big for me. Trauma is for soldiers. And she asked, quietly, what would you call it when a person's whole nervous system learns that feeling things is dangerous? She said complicated grief and disenfranchised grief. That one stopped me cold. Disenfranchised. Grief that is never given the right to exist. Grief without a franchise. Like a person without a vote. There was a word for it. Do you understand what that meant to me? For 36 years I believed I was a solitary defect. A woman broken in some private, shameful way that no one else had ever been broken. And there was a word. There was a whole shelf of books. There were other women, thousands upon thousands of them, in plain dresses and in blue jeans, on farms and in cities, who had heard babies crying in empty rooms. I was not a defect. I was a textbook. I cannot tell you which of those two things I would have believed less at 4:30 that morning. Near the end, she asked me one more question. She asked, what did you want that week after the funeral? Not what did you need, what did you want? And no one had ever asked me that question. Not that week, not in the 66 years surrounding that week. And I had to go looking for the answer in rooms of myself with dust sheets over the furniture. And finally I said, I wanted someone to sit with me and say her name. That is all. Not to explain God to me. Not to tell me she was in a better place. My arms were the better place. I knew where the better place was. Just to sit and say Sarah and let it be sad, because it was sad. It was the saddest thing that ever happened, and everyone acted as if the saddest thing that ever happened had not happened. And Dr. Hoffman nodded and looked at me and said, then let us be two people sitting together. And she said Sarah out loud, in the quiet. And then she said, tell me about her hair again. And we sat there, an old runaway Amish woman and a young English doctor. And we talked about my daughter's dark hair for the last 10 minutes of the hour, as if she had lived, as if she mattered, because she had. Do you hear me? She had mattered. Every day of those 36 silent years she had mattered, and it took me until that room to learn that mattering does not need permission. When I came out to the waiting room, Emma stood up so fast she dropped her book. I must have been a sight, my eyes swollen, my headscarf crooked, an old woman rinsed out like a jar. And Emma looked at my face, and her own face crumpled, and she said, oh, gross mammy, and I said, and I do not know where it came from. I said, Emma, I have an appointment same time next Thursday, and we should stop on the way home for one of those coffees you drink, the foolish ones with the caramel. And she laughed and cried at the same time, right there by the little fountain, and the receptionist pretended very hard to be reading something, bless her. In the car I did not talk for a long while, and Emma let me not talk. She is wise that way. And somewhere past the grain elevator, I said, mostly to the window, she stopped writing. Emma, partway through, she stopped writing and just looked at me. And Emma said, why? And I said, because she had never heard anything like me before. And I sat with that the whole way home, watching the tired snow go by. And I felt two things at once. And I have since learned that feeling two things at once is allowed. I felt the oldest sorrow of my life sitting openly in my lap at last, out of its box, heavy as ever. And underneath it, so faint I almost missed it, I felt something I had no practice recognizing. I believe you English call it hope. That was over a year ago now. I have gone every Thursday since, save 2. Once for a fever and once for a blizzard. And Dr. Hoffman said the blizzard one could have been a telephone session. And I told her that a woman who has driven a buggy through lake-effect snow to a 3-hour church service does not talk to a machine about her feelings. And she laughed and we compromised. And I talked to the machine about my feelings. I will not pretend the Thursdays since have all been like the first. Most are quieter. Some are hard in a duller way, like clearing stones from a field. The same motion over and over, and you look up and the field seems no clearer. And then 1 month you look up, and it is. We have talked about Rachel, and the 11 years, and I have learned that I can be sorry all the way down to the ground, without drowning in it. That guilt which only punishes is a wheel spinning in mud. But guilt that turns into repair, into showing up, into saying the words out loud to the person you failed. That guilt can pull a wagon somewhere. I said those words to Rachel last spring, at her kitchen table, the full accounting, no tucked-in corners, and my daughter cried, and I cried. And we are not finished. Such things are never finished in a season, but the hedge between us is coming out, root by root, and we planted asparagus where part of it stood, which takes 3 years to bear. And we both understood what we were saying by planting it. We have talked about the church too, and here I want to be careful, because I know some of you watching are ex-Amish. And some of you are still plain and watching this in secret on a telephone you are not supposed to have. And I see you, dear one. I was you. And some of you are English people who only came for the bonnets. Dr. Hoffman never once told me what to believe. I feared that, going in. I feared therapy was a machine for washing the faith out of people. It is not, or it was not for me. My faith is still here. It is different, it is quieter. It has fewer fences and more open pasture, but I still pray. I still read the old German Bible that was my mother's, and I have found a small church where nobody minds that I sometimes sing the hymns too slow, at Amish speed, from habit. What therapy washed out of me was not God. It was the terror that had been wearing God's clothes. I can tell them apart now. That is the plainest way I can say it. There is a voice that says you are watched, weighed, and one mistake from the fire. And there is a voice that sat with me while I talked about a baby's dark hair. And I have finally learned which of those 2 voices was love. And the body, I must tell you about the body, because this astonished me most of all. The headaches that lived with me for decades come seldom now. I sleep, most nights, 5 and 6 hours together, which for me is a miracle worth a hymn. Last October, for the first time in 37 years, I did not lose days of my life to the fog. Instead, on the 14th, Sarah's Day, Emma drove me 200 miles, right past the edge of my old district, to the graveyard behind the schoolhouse, and I stood at the small stone with her name and one date on it, and I said her name out loud in the open air, on Amish ground, where the wind could take it into the cornfields. And I told her about her father's last words, and I told her she has a niece in nursing school with her same stubborn chin. No one troubled us. An old woman in a black coat at a graveside is invisible everywhere in the world. And on the drive home I slept in the car like a child. And Emma said I snored, which I do not believe. And we stopped for the caramel coffee. And that, my friends, was the whole of the saddest day of my year. Sad and clean. Grief with the infection finally drained out of it. I did not know, For 60 years I did not know that sorrow could be clean. Now, I know some of you have questions rising up like bread, because you always ask them. So let me answer a few before they reach the comments. Do I hate the Amish? No. Read my lips? No. I miss them every single day. I miss the singing and the quiet and the barn smell and my sons. Dear God, I miss my sons, and the door of my heart stands open for them until they close my coffin, and I have told Rebecca to tell them so. The Amish did not invent silence around pain. They only perfected one variety of it. I have met English women my age, born with electricity and automobiles and television, who buried babies in the 1980s and were told by English doctors and English mothers to have another one quickly and not to dwell. The machine I lived in has cousins everywhere, in every country you are commenting from, and some of you are living in one right now and calling it normal, the way I did. That is really why I make these videos, not for the bonnets. Would I have left if Levi had lived? I do not know. That is the honest answer. I was a different woman inside that marriage, and she and I are still getting acquainted. Do I think every plain person needs therapy? It is not my place to prescribe for a people I have left. I will only say this. In every community on this earth, plain or fancy, there are women standing at kitchen counters right now, gripping the edge, waiting for their hearts to slow down, certain they are the only one. They are not the only one. If you take nothing else from an old woman's ramble, take that. And now we are near the end, and I want to leave you with 3 things, because I was raised on 3-point sermons and some habits keep. The first is for those of you carrying a Sarah of your own. Perhaps it is a child. Perhaps it is a marriage. A country you left. A body that changed. A self you were made to bury young. Whatever it is, hear me. A grief that is never spoken does not stay the same size, waiting politely in its box. It compounds, like interest at the worst bank in the world, and it collects its payments from your sleep, your health, your loves, your Octobers. You do not have to tell a therapist, though I will stand here and tell you that this old woman was wrong about therapy for 63 years and has never been happier to be wrong. But tell someone. Tell one safe person, one true sentence. That is how it starts. Mine was 3 words. That is when I lost Sarah. And it came out sideways, by accident, in answer to a question about seasons. Yours can come out sideways too. Sideways still counts. The second is for those of you who are the safe person. When someone hands you their unbearable thing, you do not need wisdom. I promise you this on my mother's quilt. You do not need the right words. There are no right words. The right words are a myth that keeps people silent. Dr. Hoffman's finest moment was not anything she said. It was a pen, set down. It was staring at me like I was a standing barn, and letting her eyes be bright, and moving her next appointment without a word. Presence, my dears. Presence is the whole trade. Sit down, say the name, and let it be sad. You can do that. Anyone can do that. My whole community was full of good people who loved me, and not one of them knew they were allowed to do that. And the third thing is simply this. I was 63 when I got in the car, 66 when I sat in the chair nearest the door, and I am 67 now, learning comment sections and drinking foolish caramel coffee, and planting asparagus I may not live to eat, and planting it anyway. If you are watching this at 20 and think it is too late for you, I am laughing at you kindly from my kitchen. If you are watching at 50, at 70, at 80, hear an old woman who knows. As long as there is breath, there is a Thursday morning with your name on it. The door is not holding you. It only feels that way from the inside. So, that is the story of my first therapy session after leaving the Amish, and why a young woman stopped taking notes and stared. She was not staring at something broken. It took me a year of Thursdays to believe that. She was staring at something that had held, against all engineering, and was finally, at long last, letting itself be helped to stand. If this story touched something in you, please press the like button before you go. It truly does help more people find their way to this channel. People who may be gripping their own kitchen counters tonight. Subscribe and ring the bell if you would like to hear what happened next, because next time I will tell you about the letter that arrived last month, with my son Samuel's handwriting on it and what was inside it, and I still cannot speak of it without my hands shaking, so that will be a video and a half. And do not forget, tell me in the comments where in the world you are watching from, and if you like, tell me one true sentence of your own, sideways or straight on, whichever way it will come. I read every one with my morning coffee, and I pray over more of them than you would guess. Thank you for sitting with an old woman this long. You were my safe person today, all of you, whether you knew it or not. Go gently now. Say the names. And may God hold you the way we are meant to hold each other, warmly, and without one word of hurry. Goodbye, my dears. Until Thursday.